Queen Elizabeth II was known for her mystery, a figure who captured the world's attention with her composure, grace, and remarkable reign. But what if everything we thought we knew about her was just the surface? King Charles, now the reigning monarch, has begun to pull back the curtain, revealing secrets and stories that most of us never knew about the woman who led an empire for over 70 years. This isn't just about the Queen we saw in public, but the hidden details, the personal stories, and the fascinating truth behind her carefully guarded life. These revelations not only shed light on the private side of Queen Elizabeth II, but also add depth to the legacy she leaves behind. So, sit tight, because you're about to uncover the shocking details that have been kept under wraps for decades. Born on April 21, 1926, Princess Elizabeth, who would become Queen Elizabeth II, arrived into a world full of tradition and expectation. But she was not the heir to the throne at the time of her birth. Her uncle, Edward VIII, was next in line, and with him, the throne seemed set in a way that didn't quite anticipate Elizabeth's ascent. The Duke and Duchess of York, her parents, had no idea that their eldest daughter would soon take the throne. When Edward abdicated in 1936, after a public scandal involving Wallis Simpson, Elizabeth's father, George VI, became king, and Elizabeth's path to the throne became inevitable. The world had no idea that this young princess, who grew up quietly, would one day become the longest reigning monarch in British history. As a child, Elizabeth was described as curious, responsible, and thoughtful. Her childhood, though royal, wasn't as extravagant as one might think. Her mother, the Queen Mother, was known for being deeply involved in their upbringing. Elizabeth and her younger sister, Princess Margaret, were educated at home, which allowed them to bond closely and grow up in a nurturing environment away from the public eye. The two were taught a broad range of subjects, including languages, history, music, and more. But it wasn't just formal education, it was also about the values instilled in them. Elizabeth was taught that duty came first, a lesson she carried with her for the rest of her life. In 1936, everything changed. The abdication of Edward VIII meant that her father, George VI, ascended to the throne. This sudden shift made Elizabeth the heir presumptive, a position that would define much of her life. Still, as a young girl, Elizabeth wasn't exposed to the public spotlight in the way she would be later on. In fact, there were only a few public engagements during her youth, and she had limited exposure to the duties of royalty. But when her father became king, she began to take on more responsibility, even attending royal functions and events alongside her family. Elizabeth's first encounter with Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, whom she would eventually marry, happened in 1934 during a family gathering. Though she was just 8 years old at the time, their paths crossed several times over the years. It wasn't until 1939, during a visit to the Royal Naval College in Dartmouth, that their bond began to strengthen. Elizabeth, just 13 at the time, was smitten by Philip, who was 5 years older. Their connection grew over time, and they began to exchange letters, a practice that would eventually lead to their engagement. Despite their young age, the bond between the two became undeniable. Their engagement was officially announced in July 1947, and the world waited in anticipation for the royal wedding. On November 20, 1947, Elizabeth married Philip at Westminster Abbey, a grand occasion that was celebrated worldwide. The wedding dress, designed by Norman Hartnell, was a masterpiece of its own, adorned with 10,000 pearls. This was no ordinary dress. It was a symbol of hope for a nation still recovering from the ravages of war. Yet, despite the grandeur of the wedding, there were challenges. Rationing in post-war Britain meant Elizabeth had to use ration coupons to purchase the fabric for her wedding gown. It was a reminder that despite her royal status, she too was affected by the country's hardships. The newlywed couple began their life together with a honeymoon at Broadlands, followed by a stay at Birkhall on the Balmoral estate. For Elizabeth and Philip it was a time of joy, but also of duty. Their lives were always intertwined with the responsibilities of royalty. As the years went by, Elizabeth's role became more defined. In 1952, following the death of her father, Elizabeth was thrust into the role of queen. At just 25 years old, she was now the leader of a nation, the head of a vast empire, and a woman carrying the weight of history on her shoulders. As queen, Elizabeth's reign was marked by significant events that shaped not just Britain but the world. From the decolonization of Africa to the creation of the European Union, Elizabeth was at the center of global change. Yet, despite the grand political landscape, Elizabeth remained a symbol of stability. Her commitment to her duties and her ability to adapt to the changing times earned her respect not only in Britain but across the globe. But what many don't realize is that despite her public persona, Elizabeth had a private life that was full of quirks, habits, and personal interests. She was known for her love of animals, particularly her beloved Pembroke Welsh corgis. In fact, her connection to corgis became so iconic that they became synonymous with her image. But there was more to her than her royal duties. Elizabeth was a fan of detective stories, especially the works of Agatha Christie. She enjoyed reading crime novels, and some say that this passion helped shape her keen observation skills, which were vital to her role as queen. Yet beyond her personal interests, Elizabeth's reign was also defined by her deep sense of duty. She never sought the spotlight for personal gain. Rather, she dedicated herself to serving her country and her people. Her speeches, though often short, carried weight. Her actions, though understated, spoke volumes. Whether during times of national crisis or global uncertainty, Elizabeth remained a steady presence in the lives of millions. One of the most defining moments of her reign came in 1997 with the death of Princess Diana. The public outpouring of grief was unprecedented. For many, Diana was the people's princess, and her loss left a void. The Queen's response to Diana's death was initially seen as distant, even cold, but over time Elizabeth showed her own humanity, addressing the nation and participating in Diana's funeral. This moment, perhaps more than any other, reminded the world that Elizabeth was not just a monarch. She was a mother, a grandmother, and a person with her own emotions and struggles. As Elizabeth grew older, her role as queen evolved. She witnessed the transformation of the British monarchy from the days of empire to a modern global institution. Her personal interests, such as her love for horses and corgis, gave her a sense of normalcy amidst the royal duties. Even as a queen, Elizabeth remained grounded. She understood the importance of tradition, but she also recognized the need for change. Her ability to balance both made her a monarch like no other. Her legacy was cemented not just by her reign, but by her dedication to service. Queen Elizabeth II was not just the head of state, she was a symbol of continuity, strength, and grace. Her reign, which spanned more than 7 decades, saw significant shifts in the world. From the Cold War to the rise of the digital age, Elizabeth was a constant, a figure who stood firm while the world around her changed. Her death, on September 8, 2022, marked the end of an era. For the world, it felt like the closing of a chapter in history. Yet, even in death, Queen Elizabeth's influence remains. Leaders across the globe, from Joe Biden in the United States to Tsai Ing-wen in Taiwan, expressed their condolences, acknowledging her role in shaping the modern world. Her legacy is one of dedication, service, and the quiet power of a woman who reigned for over 70 years. The tributes to Queen Elizabeth poured in, from the UK to the Commonwealth and beyond. Her passing sparked national mourning, with ceremonies held in her honor, including a service at St. Paul's Cathedral. Landmarks across the UK were illuminated, and church bells tolled to commemorate the life of a woman who had devoted her life to the country she loved. Looking ahead, a national memorial will be unveiled in 2026 to mark what would have been her 100th birthday. This tribute will ensure that her legacy lives on for generations to come, a lasting reminder of the woman who ruled an empire with dignity, grace, and a deep sense of duty. Queen Elizabeth II was not just a monarch, she was an institution in herself, a figure whose influence transcended borders and generations. As we reflect on her life and reign, we are reminded that behind the crown, behind the public appearances, there was a woman who lived a full life, a life full of challenges, triumphs, and an unwavering commitment to her role. Queen Elizabeth II was a queen in every sense of the word, and her legacy will continue to inspire for years to come. And so, as we say goodbye to the queen who reigned for 7 decades, we are left with one final question. What does it mean to live a life of service and duty? Queen Elizabeth II showed us that it's not just about holding power, but about using that power to serve others. It's about dedication, sacrifice, and the quiet strength that comes from doing what is right, no matter the cost. As we move forward, we can only hope to embody a fraction of that same dedication in our own lives. The curtain has been pulled back, and the secrets revealed, yet the Queen's story is far from over. Her legacy lives on in every moment, every lesson, and every act of service that continues to shape the world today.